Hello and welcome to the March or Die show today. Very glad to have you joining me. And this is a special episode. I'm excited to introduce you. If you're not familiar with him, you may be, with my guest today. My guest is Jeff Allen. He is a stand-up comedian, incredible comedy. If you've watched any of the Dry Bar comedy, you've heard him there and a number of other places. He's been doing this for a very long time. But he's also a Christian and has an incredible testimony. And we just had a wonderful conversation, which I'm looking forward to sharing with you. And we'll jump into that in just a moment. Hello and welcome back to the March or Die show today. Again, very, very glad to have you joining me. This is a conversation you're going to love and learn from. And I'm excited to share that with you. Before we jump into that, however, I will remind you, if you have not yet subscribed, go ahead and subscribe to this show wherever you're listening from. You need to subscribe. So go ahead and do that. And then if you haven't, again, yet taken the time to go to the March or Die website, marchordie.com, marchordie.com, please check that out. There you'll find archived episodes of this show. You'll find other great content there, as well as the March or Die store. So please go and check those out. And I don't want to talk a lot today leading into this conversation. Jeff Allen is a stand-up comedian. He's a comedian my family and I have enjoyed for a long time. Found him the first time on Dry Bar Comedy. If you're a stand-up fan and you like clip, look up Dry Bar Comedy. They do a great job, produced by the folks at Angel Studios. And so they do a great job there. Some incredible comedians. And Jeff is one of those. And he's been there. Again, he's been on the road for many, many years. And he talks about that in this interview, talks about how he got involved in comedy and how long he's been at it and all of those things. But an incredible comedian. But then I heard from a friend that he also has an incredible testimony. I started following him on social media and started learning more about his testimony, and really wanted to talk to him. Thankfully, that connection was made, and I get to share this conversation with you. It's very, very helpful. If you've struggled, if you have questioned, if you've had a marriage that was experiencing severe difficulty, but want to understand that there is hope, this is the conversation for you. This is a great hope-filled conversation, and I know that it will be a blessing. Without further ado, my interview with Jeff Allen. Jeff, thank you so much for joining me. This is exciting for me. I'm looking forward to having this conversation.
Well, thanks for having me. I mean, obviously, we can't do what I do alone, so it helps that there are people out there interested. And took me a long time to even get to a point in my life where I thought maybe anybody would want to talk to me. I couldn't figure out why. So, yeah.
Well, I learned about you first through Dry Bar Comedy and your Dry Bar Comedy special, and started following you on social media, and I love your comedy. It's incredible. But then I started to hear about your personal story, and a mutual friend connected us. Joel Fieri connected us through Lenny, and he said, "Man, you need to have Jeff on to hear his story and to hear him talk about what God has done in his life and all of these things." And I started to hear that, and as much as I love your comedy, man, I'm really excited for people to be able to hear your story. And I don't know that a lot of people who know you from the platform or from the stage necessarily do. So start wherever you'd like, I guess. I'd love to hear how you grew up and then really get to your faith story and what God has kind of done on your journey.
Oh, okay. Well, I grew up on the south suburbs of Chicago, and a small little town. I used to say Rome might not have been built in a day, but Sauk Village certainly was. It was like the era of prefab homes. The slur on our city, our town, was Cardboard City. Everything was put up. They built the houses somewhere else and poured a foundation and drove the house in on a truck and pounded the walls together, put a roof on. It was up
Wow.
in a day or two. So that's where I grew up. And it was, in hindsight, thinking back, I'm really glad I had that kind of an upbringing. I think people who grow up like that, I think, tend to trust humanity more than people who grow up in areas where you can't trust people. But
Yeah.
we walked the streets. We played baseball in the streets. Everybody knew everybody, and yeah, there wasn't a lot of paranoia. But one of the things that was common was it was a blue collar town, and everybody, all my friends' parents drank. My parents drank. And I started at 13, I think was the first time I got drunk.
Wow.
It really doesn't go into perspective till I look at my 11-year-old granddaughter and I think of 2 years from now. I can't imagine uh, her drinking at that age,
Yeah.
but when
Yeah.
you're in it, it's just life. So anyway, I drank whenever I could. And then, that finally came to a head, when I got married. I was alcoholic for years, and I was doing comedy. I got into comedy. I used to say, if you like to nap, get a job at a mattress factory. If you like to drink, get a job at a bar. So I saw this comedy club back in 1978, and I had seen some comedians probably 2 or 3 years earlier, and thought, boy, that would be cool. Where do you learn to do comedy? It's not like they have a table set up on
Yeah.
career day in high school.
Right.
And not ambition is not one of my strong characteristics. So I just figured, well, that's out. And then I saw they had a comedy club. I was working for another company, and we went to the comedy club, and I saw 8 or 10 comedians that night, and I thought, oh, this is what I want to do. And it took me about 3 months to work the courage or drink the courage up. Anyway, that was Thursday night and Sunday nights were open mic nights. So I go in Thursday finally after 3 months of hanging at the club and just bomb horrifically. I mean, horrifically. I come back Sunday and sign up again, and the MC comes over and he says, "You're going to have to make some sense tonight. We're still trying to figure out what you said Thursday night." And I did not know that you prepared material as a comedian. I just thought comedians, because it looks so natural, I just
Yeah.
thought they just kind of came off with the top of their head. So
Yeah.
I was doing it for a few weeks before I saw some guy writing in a notebook, and I go, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Well, I'm preparing my set." I go, "You prepare this stuff?" So first rule, if you're a young comic out there listening to this, yeah, prepare some stuff. It's
Prepare.
always
Prepare.
it's always because there were nights I'd walk up, look at the crowd, and run off, wouldn't say a word. My brain would go blank, and I would just run
Yeah.
off in panic. And I had terrible stage fright. To put it in perspective, I was a year and a half into it, and some club owner came to me and said, "You'll never make a living at this." And I said, "Thank you." And he goes, "You're welcome." And I said, "There isn't anybody who's ever made anything of their life that hasn't some jerk in it tell them they're not going to make anything of their life. You're my jerk." So I tell this story just about every interview. So, and I got lucky, very lucky. In 1980, the entire country exploded with comedy clubs. So there
Yeah.
were a
Yeah.
lot more clubs than there were comedians. So I just was able to travel around, be bad at something, and get paid a few bucks and sustain my life until I developed some skills. And obviously, in that environment and in the 80s, cocaine was. I had club owners try to pay me in cocaine.
Wow.
At least I was smart enough to know that AT&T wouldn't take it as a form of
Yeah.
currency.
Right.
I had phone bills to pay and rent to
Right.
pay, and I
Wow.
need cash. But
Wow.
anyway, I'll tell you how ubiquitous it was, and how I was doing cocaine at a Denny's one night, just chopping it up on the table, and the manager came over and said, "Are you an idiot? That's a felony. You can't be doing that openly. I mean, the
Yeah.
police hit you here all the time,
Yeah.
idiot."
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
and I didn't even think about it. I just,
Yeah.
So I met my wife. We moved to Boston, and about a year into our marriage, I either had to quit drinking or give up the marriage. I knew this, and I got sober at 31, and they said pray, and I said to what? I always say the only thing that exceeded my ignorance was my arrogance.
Yeah.
It's a great
Yeah.
combination, ignorance and arrogance. I see a lot of it today on
Yeah.
television.
There's an awful lot of it out there.
What passes for wisdom is just doesn't do much for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was angry, bitter, jaded, cynical, foul mouthed, and that lasted quite a while. Just wrote a book about that. Are we there yet? And the first 6 chapters, I always tell audiences, it's our story, my wife and I story. If you can get through that without killing yourself, it's an uplifting tale.
Yeah.
So, but we
If you can get through it.
everything that you could think of that destroys a marriage. We had alcoholism, drug addiction, bankruptcy, infidelity, uh, and I asked her to marry me at baggage claim at Cleveland Airport on an impulse.
Oh,
I was flying on a red eye from LA, and I was probably pretty soused. And we had had a relationship from the previous November. This was April. I probably saw her maybe 15 times in 4 months,
wow.
5 months. And she had a 2-year-old son. So we're standing there at baggage claim, and I asked, I said, I love you. I love Aaron. You want to get married? And she said, pardon me. I said, do you want to get married? You and I. So she knew who I was talking about. And she thought about it, and this is exactly what she said to me. Yeah, I guess if that's what you want. I
Wow.
mean, that's how excited she was.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
So anyway, the joke is, we left the airport, and she had no idea the baggage she took home, and
Right. Right.
that was me. And I was not a poster boy for the what a husband should be. Um, and when I quit drinking, it got worse. The anger, I had nothing to put a cap on it, and I smashed things, broke things, and uh, yeah, about 7 years into that, and we were living in Arizona at the time, and I met a guy on the road that was doing comedy. He was a businessman. He had just sold his business for I don't know how many millions of dollars. And I was reading Ayn Rand now at this point. I was about 8 years in the 12-step program. Couldn't get my head around the higher power. I kept telling people, if I'm making up a deity that makes me delusional, I don't understand how people can make up something that makes them feel better and that lasts through like life, death of a child, loss of a job,
Yep.
cancer, and you're on your knees trying to find some comfort in the midst of this storm and trying to make some sense out of why this is happening to you. And your brain is chirping. Who are you talking to? What are you
Yeah.
talking to?
Yeah.
This isn't real. So what's the point? It's interesting. We have a small group in our house on Tuesday nights, and last night we were talking about superstitions. And as a former baseball player, I used to remember the guys that wouldn't step on a line. They wouldn't step on the chalk line. And if they got a had a good day at the plate, they wouldn't change their jockstrap.
Yeah. Yeah.
After,
Yeah.
I'm not changing anything,
That had to have been
and
the thing.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
funny.
exactly. It was my underwear. So, and then we were reading Isaiah, where Isaiah talked about, you take a log and you cut half of it and use it for fuel, and then you chisel the other half into some idol that you put on your mantelpiece and you worship it.
Yeah.
It's the same
Yeah.
piece of wood,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
so that was kind of what faith was to me. I go, look, if God exists, I need to know, and what does that look like? Well, I'm sitting there on a golf course talking with a guy, and now I'm reading Ayn Rand. I figured there is no God, and I got to figure out how to make money. We had just filed bankruptcy, and my wife was leaving me, and not just because of that, but because of the kind of man I was. Just
Right.
angry. I was in my head, moping around a lot, sappy. I just was never there. And it's something I struggle with today, is trying to live in the moment. The older I get, the more I realize how important that is to be present in the moment. The devil wants to take you to the past or move you to the future, which you have no control over either. The past is done and the future hasn't happened yet. But here you are sitting in a chair, and you're just not focused on the grandkids and the wife and all the love around you. So it's something I struggle with. But anyway, I was reading Ayn Rand, and he starts talking Bible, and I finally said to him,
Mm.
"Man, stop it with the Bible." And he goes, "What's your problem with the Bible?" And I said, "Well, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. So God's word, that's a little archaic for me." And he said, "What's in the Bible you don't think is true?" And I go, "I don't know. I never read the Bible." And he says, "Then you're not really an atheist. You're a moron."
Right.
You know,
Right.
yeah. And it's like, what are you talking about? And he said, "Look, I'll give you the short answer. It's the most influential book in the history of mankind, and you can't even crack it open. It's just lazy and moronic. And besides, what you're denying exists as an omniscient being. In order to deny that yourself, you have to be truly omniscient yourself. you have to have an understanding of the entire universe before you can discount someone that may have an understanding of the entire.
Mm,
And I'm looking at him going, what are you talking about? He goes, you
yeah.
can't defend an absolute negative. And I had no, I had no idea, and what he was talking about. But anyway, that was the start of our friendship. He called me a moron, and I thought, hey, someone who has low self-esteem, this guy could be great. He could beat the crap out of me for the rest of my life.
You've had some
And
of
we
those
had,
people in your life telling you can't make
that's
it. That's funny.
right. So anyway, he sent me Bible tapes, and we had a friendship for a good, well over a year.
Wow.
Never opened a Bible tape up. Never said to me, "I sent you Bible tapes," but always ended our phone conversations with "How are you and Tammy doing?" And I'd say, "Not too good, Phil, but I think she's going to leave me." And we had
Mm,
divorce papers filled out, and notarized, and 10 minutes from the courthouse, she said, "Let's go home." And that's when I told her. I said, "We go home. This is off the table. Divorce is off the table. This is your one chance to get out from me." And I understood it. I really did.
right.
I said, I told her, you deserve better than me. I mean, I loved her. I
Yeah.
just was damaged goods. I looked at my brother, my father, all the male cousins in our family. We were all lunatics
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
miserable human beings. So why would I be any different? So anyway, we went home, but she still had the paper. She told me she kept them for like a year, just in case.
Just
I
in
didn't know that.
case.
Yeah,
Just in
just in
case.
case. Yeah, she was hedging. But anyway, after about a year or so, she takes the kids and going to Ohio to get away from me. I was getting out of comedy. I was done. I really was done. I couldn't muster the energy to get up and perform. I was sitting on stools and looking at the audience. I remember one night, I tell the story in the book. I was in a hockey rink. Everybody was doing comedy. Everybody. So they had a hockey rink
Wow.
on a Saturday night filled
Wow.
with chairs, 500
Wow.
people,
Wow.
packed out house Saturday night. And I can't even talk. I'm just sitting on a stool looking at the floor, and I look at the crowd and I go, why are we here? And it's just, I mean, you can hear a pin drop, man. I mean, they're looking at someone losing their mind. And some woman in the back of the hockey rink goes, we just want to hear some jokes. And it broke me. I just said, that's a legitimate request at a comedy club. I think that's good. And I finished the show, had a good time, and I'm the manager or the booker of that club sent my agent a note that said, I don't know what happened to him, but we can't use him anymore. He's losing it. He just doesn't seem to be enjoying himself, and he needs to get his life together. So anyway, Tammy goes to Ohio with the kids, and I got these tapes that are Bible tapes. And one day, that little voice that lives inside all of us, that quiet. I tell churches all the time that you need to shut off all the noise. If I was the devil and I wanted to drown out the voice of God, I would just create the iPod
Mm,
and digital music, Spotify, just
mm,
noise, just noise all day, every day.
yeah.
But God won't shout over the noise. He'll just whisper to you
Mm,
quietly. So you have
that's
to be
good.
quiet. Yeah.
Good.
So anyway, I was walking by and that voice says, open one up. And I'm thinking, why? And I'm not kidding you. It was like there was someone in the room going, open one up. And I go, why? And then the other voice, the satanic part of me says,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
nothing in there for you. It's just
Right.
Bible.
Right.
So that's useless. So anyway, at one point I opened one up and I looked at the tape. It was Ecclesiastes. And
Interesting. Wow.
yeah, it.
Wow.
So anyway, I popped it in, heard meaningless, meaningless, all in life is meaningless, and my heart leapt because to me that was the deep truth that I had come to.
Mm,
Tammy would shake me. You don't care about anything. I go, I don't. And she'd say, who says that? I go, I'm being honest with you, Tammy. I'm not going to sit here and gaslight you. I mean, if your wife comes to you and says you don't care about anything, and you go, no,
yeah.
I care about everything. Then well, you sure have an odd way of showing it.
Right. Right.
And but I didn't. I really didn't. We were losing everything, and I just didn't care. I didn't see why it mattered what size house we had, or if we, we'll get a room, we'll get roof, we'll get clothes. I'll keep the lights on. But other than that, I don't know why anything mattered. But when I heard that meaningless, it's nothing under the sun, and I knew right away what under the sun meant, and that's here on Earth.
Yeah.
And I just dove into that book,
Wow.
Ecclesiastes. I
Wow.
went through every tape
Wow.
that this pastor from Texas had sent me, and I looked for all these Ecclesiastes tapes. And what I got out of them, in essence, was the first one was life without God will have no meaning. Without meaning to your life, there's no purpose, and without purpose, suicide.
Mm.
And boy, are we
Mm.
seeing a rash of that in today's culture.
Yes.
They look ahead, and that's what the devil does. He projects. He helps you project this meaningless life that you're going to have, and you sit there and look 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line, and it just gets to this hopeless existence. And he wasn't saying that life was meaningless. He's saying trying to find meaning here on earth that lasts is futile.
Yeah.
Nothing of this earth it's all temporal. Everything is temporal. And I had lived long enough, now I was almost 38 years old, to where I could look at it and go, he was right. Everything that brought me joy was gone,
Yep.
except for my wife and children. And I didn't know how to enjoy them because I was wrapped up in all the other stuff, not being able to pay the bills, and
Yep.
what am I going to do with the rest of all these things. And then I opened up another tape, and basically that sermon was about, if happiness was an act of human will, we would all be happy. Who doesn't want to be
Yeah.
happy?
Yeah.
So if you could stand in front of the mirror like the New Age people, and I've tried this, I was reading New Age,
Right.
Buddhism, and affirm yourself as valuable, then we would all be happy.
Yep.
There wouldn't be any need for anything, But the truth is, according to Solomon, something outside of us has to come inside of us and work its way out.
True.
And if you want to be happy, you have to understand where it comes from. And God wired us for service. We are to serve, and that's where the joy comes from. It's all paradoxical to what the world is telling us today. And growing up in the 80s, where it was all about greed and everything, and I thought I got left behind. I mean, I was never going to make that kind of money. In my mind's eye, I was, and that's where the joy, and my father built that in me, that we were never meant to have those nice things
Yeah.
in life and all of
Yeah.
that. So anyway, I dove into the Bible, just dove into it. That summer she was gone. And I mean, I was just blown away. At one point, I wanted to run on the lawn and hold the Bible up and go, "Anybody read this? Oh my gosh, what an amazing book!" Like I was the first one to ever read
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And when I got to Genesis 1:1, I don't know how many tapes I was into before I heard Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God, I knew there was a God, and it broke me. I fell on my face in my living room, and then this panic came over me, and I called my buddy Phil up, and I go, "Phil, there's a God." I'm sobbing on the phone. "There's a God." He said, "Yeah, I've been trying to tell you for like over a year, but you got a problem with that." I said, "Yeah, how about blasphemy, cursing him, denying him? And why would he want me? Why would he not crush me?" And it's how it happens when you spend all your time in the Old Testament. It's not a lot of grace. Not a
Not a
lot of
whole lot of
grace.
grace. Yeah, not a lot of grace
Yeah.
there.
So anyway, he says, "Have you gotten to the cross?" And I go, "The cross?" He goes, "Yeah, Jesus is in the cross." I go, "No, I haven't." He goes, "Oh, I can't ruin the ending for you, man." He says, "Why don't you pick up a tape on John? I'm sure there's a tape in there on John." And it was the woman at the well that broke me.
Mm. Mm.
And I realized that what I was suffering from was a spiritual thirst.
Yeah.
And whatever I tried, Solomon was right, was futile. I mean, it would quench me. I'd get a particular gig, or something would come. We'd get a nice car or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever it was temporal, but it would quench that thirst. And I go, okay,
Yeah.
I think this is meaning, this is point, this is purpose. And then it would go away. So when Jesus told the woman, he goes, "What I offer you, you'll never thirst again." And I knew it. I knew what that meant. I mean, this angst, this emptiness, this confusion of why does it all matter? What's the point? Would leave. And then it was about 2 or 3 months after I started listening to the tapes. I was on the road in Texas, and my buddy Phil came out, and then I went to church. I met Tommy Nelson, the pastor who I was
Mm.
listening to on these tapes.
Oh, wow.
And I was like gum on his shoe. "Oh, Tommy
Yeah.
Nelson, listen to your tapes." So anyway, went back to his house. He said, when I met you, God put it on my heart. And I never heard anybody talk that way, but he said,
Mm,
when God put it on my heart that you were looking for something, have you found it? And I said, the only thing I could think to say was, if Jesus is not who he claimed to be, then Solomon was right. I'm a dead man. And I was a dead man walking. I really was. There was no joy in my life. I had all this beautiful love around me between my wife and my kids, and it was just meaningless to me, pointless.
yeah. Yeah.
And I just said, Jesus, whatever this is, me, whatever I am, it's yours. And if you are who you claim to be, then we'll have a lifetime relationship.
Wow.
And anyway, it's 27 years now, I think.
Wow.
And I can't imagine ever going back. And I've had those moments, where I get locked into sin.
Yep.
Paul talks about it, your old nature, and is now warring with the new nature.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
those thorns that you get. And I don't know if we'll ever be free of our old nature this side of heaven.
Right.
But there were moments I got exhausted because I just started getting angry again. And Tammy at one point said to me, "You haven't changed at all." And that was like a knife to my heart.
Yeah.
And I heard a sermon that, God will give us this honeymoon period. I love the metaphors that Jesus uses as bride, and the Holy Spirit it bonds us with Jesus as one. Like when you get married, man takes a wife, you become one.
Yeah.
And that one made a lot of sense to me, because as my marriage began to split up, when I read that verse where man will take a wife and together they become one flesh, I thought, boy, if that breaks up, the pain of our marriage falling apart was like tearing flesh. I mean, I can't describe anything I've gone through. And if you look at my face, it's been punched more than once. I mean, that hurts. But
Yeah.
that marriage breaking
Yeah.
up was the most painful thing I'd ever
Yeah.
gone through. And so that I used to tell church audiences, whether you believe that to be the divine word of God or you believe it to be a metaphor, it's an apt and accurate metaphor of what happens when you get married. You become one. She
Yep.
hurts, you hurt. I hurt, she hurts.
Yep.
We experience joy together. We experience life together. And
Yep.
as it begins to tear apart, the pain of that, it's literally ripping of flesh, and it's not healthy, and it hurts. So I was able to. I had enough of looking in the world for answers to those deeper questions to know that when I gave my life, I said, "I am yours."
Yeah.
That if it wasn't true, then it would just last whatever, a month to whatever it was. It would go away. But I found myself, I had a honeymoon period of a couple years
Mhm.
where I was just on fire. I was sharing the gospel with everybody.
Yep.
And then, then one little sin enters, and then, all of a sudden you're back, and then your wife looks at you and says, you haven't changed. And it's like, and then I heard a sermon where a pastor talked about that. He said, that's common. Believers get 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line.
Sure.
And then it's
Sure.
like, is this it? But then what happens is you look back at where you were when you met Jesus, and you ask yourself, do I want to go back to that?
Yep. Right.
And it's like, no way, man. I'm going to plow through this. And then I
Yeah.
just don't. My answer to everything is to diving into the Word.
That's good.
And I'll share this with your listeners. I did an interview for the book for a family Christian magazine. It's going to come out in the fall. And the publisher gave me a book called The First Hour, Mark Koch. And you begin your day with praying with your relationship with God, your relationship with your family, your wife, and then your career. And you spend 30 minutes. It's 18 prayers, I think. You read them.
Mm.
He wrote them all out. And then you start on the New Testament. I'm reading Matthew again. Just finished Matthew. I'm going into Mark. I'm 9 days into it, and I can already feel a better connection by starting my
Yep.
day out. I always get to the point where I'll get to that. Oh yeah, the Bible. Yeah, I'll get to that.
Yep.
And it sits on my nightstand. And
Yep.
then life starts happening. You start getting busy, and then all of a sudden it's 10 o'clock at night. And you go, all right, yeah, tomorrow. I'll get to that tomorrow.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then next thing you know, a couple months have gone by, and I'm snipping and snapping at people. And Tammy knows it right away. She goes, "You're not studying, are you?"
Get in the
And then I
word.
go, "Shut up." Yeah, shut up, leave me alone.
What do you know?
But as a person that's welded to you as one, she feels the disconnect from the marriage with Christ.
What was the
And
what was the process with her like on the other side of your salvation? And I think it's very common for someone in a relationship to accept Christ and then the spouse to wait to see if things have changed and they haven't changed and it's not
right.
real. And what happened with your wife that kind of
Well,
led
it's
her to
interesting.
that place of faith?
Yeah, she came back. She was raised in the church by people who abused her.
Mm,
So she saw that Sunday best and then Monday
yeah,
through
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Saturday,
yeah, yeah,
that hypocrisy. And I think her father was a deacon or an elder at the church and put the clothes on and the face on Sunday and then was not very nice. They
yeah.
treated her pretty badly. So when I told her, she got home in August for the kids for school that summer. And yeah, we had talked and kept I saw her a couple times. I was traveling doing shows and took the kids with me for a couple weeks. And but anyway, I didn't tell her right away
Mm,
about that. And sometime in September. Well, it's interesting. I'll back up. I'll tell you, the book begins with the baggage claim proposal, and in the first chapter, I wanted the reader to fall in love with my romantic side.
mhm.
So
Right there's the
I
baggage
want
claim.
I want some woman to read that and look at her husband and go, "Oh my gosh, yeah, you with the ring and the one knee and the rice restaurant, what was that?" So anyway, that's how the chapter begins, and the chapter ends 7 years later. I find out Tammy's having an affair with a guy in California, and we were living in Arizona at the time, and I told her I found out about it because I called her friend. She was supposed to. It's before cell phones.
Mm,
So I had to talk to her about something, and her friend says she's at the mall shopping, by herself. I mean, nobody goes to visit a friend and then goes to the mall to shop.
right.
So I called my credit card company and asked if it was being used in Southern California. They said, yeah, it's at a hotel. So anyway, I called the hotel, asked for her by name. She picked up the phone. I said, gotcha.
Mm,
And I said, get home. I'm not doing this over the phone. Um, and 2 hours later, her friend called me and said she will not be home tonight. She's too devastated to be out in public. And I believe this, Jeremy. Had she come home that night, we would not be married today.
yeah. Yeah.
In the book of James compares the human tongue to a rudder on a ship.
Yeah.
The rudder's a
Yep.
small part, yeah, and the tongue is a small part of but we steer our life with our tongue.
Yeah.
You can bless, edify, build up, or you can cut, curse, and tear. I would have cut her that night. I really would have. The things I would have said to her, I don't think we would have ever recovered from. But I had a night alone with that voice, that
Hmm.
that voice, and it was a reminder of everything I said or did as a husband. And it wasn't pretty. One of the things I share in the book was we got into an argument in New Jersey where I stood on a stool and I screamed at her till she fell down and wept. And I put my son to bed that night. He goes, Daddy, you win. I go, what do you mean I win? He goes, you yell, mommy cries. You win. And not one of my
Wow.
prouder moments.
Wow.
Not
Yeah.
one of my prouder moments.
Yeah.
So I got help. I went down and told Tammy, I said, I don't want to be this person. I really don't. I don't know why I am, but I'm going to find out. And that's when I started therapy. But that's, so the next day she comes back from California and I pick her up at the airport at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm exhausted. I was up all night. It was just one reminder after another. I get righteously angry. How could she be
Yeah.
doing this? And
Yeah.
that voice would go, yeah, remember the time in Boston? Remember the time here? Remember the smashed dishes, the broken. I had a 50-pound heavy bag I used to beat
Mm.
when this anger would come up instead of smashing things because I think it saved me money. you know,
All those dishes.
all the dishes and things that you break in anger. So anyway, she told me years later. She goes, "Remember that bag you had out on the porch?" And I go, "Yeah." She goes, "Every time you went out to hit it, I thought you were hitting me." And I said, baby, I wish you'd asked. I said, it's just this bile. And I know a lot of men can relate to this. It's just this thing that's in you, this beast. Once it clicks, it has to run its course. So
Yep.
anyway, I just would beat this bag. So anyway, she came home. I was exhausted, and she's tears, just puffy from tearing, crying all night. And I walking across the airport to pick her up, and she sees me. She stops dead in her tracks, and she just braces herself, And I walked up and I put my arms around her, kissed her on the cheek, and she said, "That's it." I go, "That's all I got left. We're a mess, you and me."
Mm.
I said, "If what you want is in California, then I'm not going to stand in your way. But if you want our marriage to work, you have to own half of this mess, 50%, 50-50. If it gets 51-49, that imbalance will kill us. The resentments will start, the name calling, all of that will start. So you own your half, I own my half, and if it's meant to be, we'll get through this." And
Yep.
driving home, she said, "How did we get here?" And that's what I answered in the book. But when it came to my faith, I did not realize that she had baggage from childhood. So she looked at me and said, "What does that mean? You're a Christian." And I said, "I'm to love you as Jesus loved the church." And she said, "What does that mean?" And I said, "Honestly, I'm not sure, but I think he died for the church, us. And you're going to have to dig inside yourself and find out why that's a bad thing." And she knew I was selfish and self-centered. So the thought that I would sacrifice anything for her was foreign.
Yep.
But it took about 3 weeks. I was taking the kids on Sunday. She was staying home, and then she started coming, and again, she had a childhood faith, but she never saw it lived. But I'll tell you, she told me when she knew it was real was when we were losing the house and we were going to move to Nashville, kind of as a new beginning. And we were 3 months behind on the mortgage. I owed the IRS tens of thousands of dollars. And it was a bad place for us financially, but spiritually, we were in a great place.
Mm.
So we were sitting at the escrow office, and the lady goes, "I got bad news for you. The IRS is seizing whatever money you made on the house." And I said to the lady, "It doesn't matter. The only important things in my life are at this table." And Tammy said, for the first time, we were married maybe 8 years. She said, "For the first time in our marriage, I felt that we were a priority, that you were
Wow.
telling the truth." And that's on the Holy Spirit. That's not on
Yep.
me, because I had said things like that, and I just quit lying to her. I used to say, "Oh no, no, babe, I want to be married. I want
Right.
to, I love these stress and the all of
It's so much
the
fun.
yeah, exactly." But yeah, that was 20 some years ago. It's funny. I write about this in the book about these geographical cures. They're called. The 12-step program told me this, that when you're living in a terrible situation, you naively think that if you just move to another location, that everything will get better.
Yeah.
And it is for a couple of months, but then you bring the old baggage, the
Yeah.
old wounds, all that stuff with you. So
Yeah.
so ours was about 2 to 3 years in one place. And we would move. We would just
Yeah.
move. So we moved to Boston. We moved to Jersey. We moved to another place in Jersey. We moved to Arizona. We made 6 years in Arizona. And oddly enough, we gave our life to Jesus, and we built our life on a biblical foundation. And we've been in the
Yeah.
same house
That's good.
27 years now. Yeah.
Yeah. That's incredible. How do you, so you go through a very difficult upbringing, made bad decisions as an adult, came to Christ. God begins that work of sanctification in your life, brings you and your wife into that relationship, but you're still in a work environment. I don't know if what you consider what you do work. It is work, but a work
Yeah.
environment where you're not around, probably the best environments, and you're in difficult places and around people who aren't Christians and broken people and traveling a lot. How do you in all of that continue to walk that faith out then? I mean, in a normal setting, a person who accepts Christ after the story you just told, but they're going to work 9 to 5 and coming home every afternoon, they're
Yeah.
still going to have a hard time. But you're in this
Right.
crazy environment now where you have to walk it out in a very difficult situation.
Well, I'm lucky in that um, I fell into that trap early when I got around people that were secular. They were, whether they were atheistic, whatever they were, whatever their
Yeah.
worldview wasn't mine,
Right.
and I wanted to be accepted, and I would cuss every now and then, but I would
Mm.
get in the car, and again that little voice would guilt is a good thing.
Mm.
The world wants to tell us that guilt sucks, but guilt is there for a reason. Shame is
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
Shame says there's
Yeah.
something wrong with me, that God
Yeah.
made me flawed. That's a lie. That's the lie of the devil. But guilt is there to tell you, hey, I have a standard on which I want to live by, and when I violate that standard, I should have a tinge of guilt.
Yes.
Um, so I got
Yes.
tired of feeling that, and then I realized, you know what? If I have friends, and I do have friends that don't agree with me, that Jesus is Lord, and I don't even think they believe in God, but
Mm.
I love them dearly, and they love me dearly, and so it's not a prerequisite to be a friend with me. Again, if that was, I would have never been discipled by the guy
Right.
that
Yeah. Right.
discipled me. I mean, I
Right.
remember once he actually cussed and threw a golf club. He looked at me and said, "Look at the influence you have on me."
You're
I go,
dragging
"Let
him
it
down.
out." Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm going, "Let it out, Phil. Let it out." But I understand now what he was talking about, because when
Yeah.
you do misbehave in that, and golf draws it out of me all the time.
Yeah.
I used to say if Mother Teresa played golf, they'd have video of her breaking clubs and screaming. But so anyway, I don't expect you to be any different around me, and if the way you behave makes me feel uncomfortable, then I won't hang around with you. And
Yeah.
as far as the work goes, it's my show. It's my audience.
Yep.
These are my audience. They found me on the internet, so they're familiar with what I do. Most of them are all of them are very comfortable with my faith, whether they believe or not. I mean, I have
Right.
people tell me all the time as they leave the show, "Man, you're a funny guy. I don't agree with you on anything, you know, but I
But
really
you're so
love your
funny.
comedy." Well, that's
Yeah.
it. I mean, but I don't do any of that hot
Yeah.
button stuff
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
my show, and then work in churches. All I had was my story. That was my ministry. I would just uh, close my show. But now, what the book affords me is the ability to stand in a nightclub or in a theater and take 5 minutes at the end of my show and talk about the book, and
Mm,
that there is no book without that relationship with Christ. And I
that's
do
good.
make a joke out of it. I go, "I'm not blindsiding you. I know how you atheists are. You're going to get home, you buy the book, you'll see Jesus's name in
Right.
there, and you'll toss it across the room. Oh, these Christians, they're always backdooring their beliefs, So I'm upfront about it. I am a Bible believing Christian.
Yeah.
And
That's good.
anyways, so if that bothers you, don't buy the book, please.
That's good.
But
Man,
yeah.
it's just that authentic faith and just living out who you are. I was talking, I spoke at a church this Sunday and a young man came up to me and he said, "I'm going into the military and you were in the military. What's the best advice you can give?" And I told him there's a lot of advice I could give, but the best advice is just be an authentic Christian from the first day all the way
Right.
through. Don't let anyone push you. Be who you are and just trust God. And I think that really is the best advice probably for all of us is just live your faith out. And that's great. Yeah. That's
Well,
great.
that's it. And God will use, I mean, I can't tell you how many men I've met that were brought to the faith by crusty old Christians, man. Just, but
Yeah.
they related to them. God will move
Yeah.
your heart. But you're right. Just be who you are, and
Yeah.
don't ever deny him, you know.
That's right.
And I found it's interesting in hindsight looking back. There was a comedian in Chicago that we were kind of friends. He didn't drink, he didn't hang out with us or anything, but I always liked him, you know.
Mm.
And I find out after I become a believer that he was a believer his whole life. And I go, boy, that all makes sense.
Yeah.
You were never in turmoil. There was none of that, ever any drama around
Yeah.
you know. But
Right.
he hung in the
Yeah, that's
club. He
good.
did all of his stuff, and nobody ever looked at him and said, "Come on, say some bad words,
Right,
man.
right,
Come on."
right. Yeah, that's
Not at
good.
all. And I found that in my lifetime as a non-believer, as a man, that every man that I was attracted to and found myself wanting to be around, uh, I can't tell you for sure if they were believers because they're out of my life, but they were treated their wives with respect.
Yep.
They'd finish the round of golf. They may have a beer or two, but they'd go home to that wife. Um, they worked, and the
Yep.
weekends they spent with their family.
Yeah.
Uh, and that was attractive to me, whereas the drunks like me,
Hmm.
I used to tell people, you know, a lot of great fathers sitting on bar stools every weekend. We were all wonderful. All the things
Yeah.
we were going to do with
Right.
our kids. Yeah, I
Right.
love
Right.
my kids. Yeah, well, where are they at? Well, they're not here, and I'm not with them. That's all I
Yeah.
can tell you. And yeah, it was eye opening to uh, finally start walking the faith and then being around people who have walked it. And Tommy Nelson describes it as at some point in every man's life, he has to get downwind from himself
Hmm.
and get a good whiff of what's coming off of him.
Yep.
What kind of husband are you? What kind of father are you? What kind of citizen are you?
That's
What
good.
kind of employee are you? All the things in life that bring meaning and point and purpose. Where do you fit in with this?
That's good.
Is it just a distraction that annoys you, or is it what gives you meaning, point, and purpose? And
That's great.
it's hard. It's difficult for me. I mean, I just my wife and I were talking about the other day. We have the grandchildren now, and we look at them and we wish we could redo parenthood. We
Sure.
really
Sure.
do.
Sure. Sure.
Especially, those first 8 years are so important.
Yeah.
They're foundational years, and I'm just grateful. My oldest son, who went in the military, and uh, it's up in Montana now. And when both my boys got married, I told them on their wedding day, I said, I put stuff in you when you were little that
Mhm.
you don't remember. You just remember me being who I am now. But believe me, those first 7 or 8 years, it was not pretty. And your
Yep.
wife will draw it out of you. You're going to act in a way, you're going to
Right.
act in a way as a man that you think is unbecoming to who you think you are as a man. I said, then you can come and talk to me. So one night after a dance recital, my son, who came home from Iraq, he had PTSD and he got TBI and a lot of rage issues.
Yep.
Anyway, we come out of his daughter's dance recital. She's 4 years old, and he's in the parking garage ripping the door off his minivan. And his wife, what a saint. Boy, did God give him the right woman. She sat there, let him rip the door off, didn't say a word. And when he looked, because I know that feeling as a man, you're full of shame now. You're just ashamed of yourself. And she looked at him and said, Aaron, why don't you go grab a seat over there and get your breath? We'll get the door back on and we'll go home.
Hmm. Yep.
That broke me down, man. That broke me down. What a
Yep.
That's the way to handle it. I mean, she understood it wasn't about her, it wasn't about the kids, it
Yeah.
wasn't about anything.
Yeah.
It was just this bile. So anyway, he sent me a text a couple weeks ago, and he said, "Dad, I'm doing a lot of work now. I'm coming up on my 40th birthday, and I'm doing a lot of work trying to become a better husband and a better father." And he said, "I
Hmm.
just want you to know I forgive you.
Hmm.
I understand now. I understand why you were gone so much." And why you just needed to put a roof over our heads and food on our plate and stuff. And he said, I love you.
Yeah.
And I said to Tammy, I said, the greatest gift I ever got was children because it allowed me to lighten up on my parents.
Hmm. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I judged my parents when I was single. I stopped judging them after I became a father.
Right. That's right.
It's the hardest thing in the world to do. But
Yeah.
boy, is it, but that was, I called him up. I said, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Um, I really needed to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah. Man. That's so good, Jeff. There's so much here. Where can people find your book? Where can people follow you? You're not hard to find on the internet, but where would you like for people to go to find your book, follow you, and you're doing a lot of
Well,
other stuff. You do a Bible study, I think, and some different things people
yeah, on
can engage with.
Monday nights, we call it Monday musings.
Yeah,
I'm just, I'm a neophyte. I tell people, I mean, if you really want to study this, I'm really kind of doing it to keep myself focused on my priorities,
yep,
which is if I'm staying in scripture and so that it's kind of selfish on my part, but
that's
I
good. I think it's good. Yeah,
and then JeffAllenComedy.com. If they just go to Facebook and sign up on my fan page, we post calendars and schedules
awesome.
the book you can get. I just go to Amazon. I think it's now discounted to the point where I can't. I think they sell it for what I pay for it. So that would be the best thing I would recommend. And if you go to Amazon and read it and you like it, even if you don't like it, write a review. It helps. It helps
Yeah,
if you write a review.
that's
Yeah, we
good.
sold 20,000 copies and we got 200 reviews, so it would help if some people would. Um, but the audio, I have audio. You go to Audible. I read it. If they didn't want me to read it, I said, look, if somebody else reads my book, I'm not promoting it.
Right.
So anyway, they go, yeah, they go, all right. So anyway, you can read it. I go, thank you. It's my book. I'll read it.
That's good.
So anyway, yeah. And there's some couple things in the audio that are not in the book. I kind of veered off and gave some context to some things. So the audio is
That's
a
awesome.
little bit different than the book.
Yeah.
And I'm out on the road. I start back June 15th. I took a month off. First time in my life, I voluntarily
Yeah.
took some time off to be with Tammy. And then Saturday, I'm going to Wisconsin to play golf with some old friends I haven't seen in 20 years, and I'm going to be 68 next week. And it's that time. My 50th high school reunion's coming up, so I'm doing a lot of reflecting
Yeah.
on my mortality. A friend of mine who was graduated in '73 went to his last year and said when they start putting up the names of all the people we've lost
Mm,
from our high school, it's sobering. And
yeah.
Bible's clear, man. We're not promised tomorrow. So
That's right.
you know, kiss those people you love today, and don't let the sun go down on the anger or the resentment, and make amends if you
That's
need it.
good. That's good. Jeff Allen, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Man, I've enjoyed your comedy. My family's enjoyed your comedy, but
Oh, that's cool.
your story, man, is I'm just so grateful that you not only have lived through that and let God do that in your life, but that you share it with others. It's so important. And thank you for all that you're doing. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Very grateful for that conversation. What an incredible conversation. What an amazing story. Get the book. Get the book. Are We There Yet? At the Jeff Allen Comedy. You can go to his website, jeffallencomedy.com, or to Amazon. You can find the book there. And he asked to leave a review. Listen to it on Audible, but check that out. Really, these conversations are amazing. And one of the reasons they're amazing to me is because you see the public persona of someone like Jeff Allen, right? And don't maybe understand what's behind that and the story that is the person and the marriage and the family. And very grateful we could hear that today. And I know that was encouragement to you. Again, take some time, go to lifeaudio.com, lifeaudio.com. That's a great opportunity for you to find other faith-focused podcasts. And I think that would be very helpful for you as well to find some great content there. Go to the March or Die website, marchordie.com. Thank you for listening. I look forward to talking to you next time. Many of our veterans feel they need to fight their battles alone. This self-isolation has led to the staggering statistic of more than 20 veterans taking their lives every day. The mission of Mighty Oaks is to eradicate the veteran suicide epidemic and help our warriors change their legacies. We've been able to help over 4,000 veterans and first responders by equipping them with the tools they need to live the lives they were created to live. Our faith-based, peer-to-peer approach has one of the highest success rates of any program available today, offering hope and understanding to those who need it most. By aligning their lives to biblical principles, these men and women are able to lead their families, their communities, and our nation. It's your generosity that can make a difference in the lives of the men and women who have fought for our country and our freedoms. Now that they're home, don't let them fight alone. Learn more at mightyoaksprograms.org.